Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Univesco TV. So, week number 5 today. We have just completed more than a month. Mauro Delisanti is here with me, joined from Shanghai, and I'm here in Surabaya, Indonesia. So, I was in Bali for my last vlog, and I was in Bali for like a couple of weeks. Had some business there to attend to, and now that I'm back in Surabaya, the city that I live in Indonesia. So we'll be talking about investing in water. Today is Thursday. I just wrote a blog about my Rishi's opinion, which I write on Wechat once a week, and I wrote about investing in water as a commodity. So we all know water is something that we need to survive, and we need water to drink. We need water for food, cooking, so on and so forth. Any kindergarten kid will be able to tell you why water is essential. However, today I'm going to be focusing on how we can use water as an asset class to diversify the portfolio and also include that into your portfolio for optimal returns going forward in the future. So the reason I talk about water shortage or water scarcity or why invest in water is that in the next 10 to 15 years, about 65% of the world's population will have severe shortages of water. I don't know if many of you are aware, Chennai, the city in South India, is facing severe water shortages, and it gets twice as much rain as city of London. The only problem of water is needed for farming, water is needed for drinking, and the sad part is that what's happening especially in poorer countries, developing nations, is that the lack of infrastructure, lack of clean, accessible water is limited. Due to the improper infrastructure, the infrastructure wouldn't be as developed as, let's say, the UK or the USA. Getting access to fresh water is still considered something it's like gold for countries like in Africa or certain parts of India, certain parts of Pakistan, certain parts of Southeast Asia, even Indonesia as well. So there's a severe water shortage that we're facing, and it's also impacting climate change going forward. And as we are growing as a population, now the world's population is over 7.1, 7.2 billion people. As the population keeps rising, we need more and more demand for water. We need water to generate electricity. We need water for food, cooking, so on and so forth. But as the population is growing, we need more and more water. We're consuming more water. Back in the day when we would live in villages, our ancestors would live in villages, they maybe would not access so much water. For example, I remember my own grandparents, they would live in the village and they would have access to a certain amount of water per day. Now they would utilize in such a way that amount of water, the finite resources that they would have, they would maybe use a bucket to have a shower. Nowadays, we have modern bathrooms where we have unlimited taps, we have unlimited water. So when we're taking a shower, we could be using 400, 300, 500 liters, so on and so forth. If you have a bath, that's like 1,000 liters. We're consuming a lot of water because we have access to, as we're growing as a society financially, we're able to access water, but then we're also utilizing more water. We're also wasting a lot of water. I mean, that's the sad part. Along with food, we're also wasting water. And because water doesn't have a price yet, we're wasting, and we feel like, we wouldn't necessarily waste, let's say, Coca-Cola. We wouldn't waste alcohol, but we waste water because we feel like it's cheap, whatever. And the sad part is in certain countries like Middle Eastern countries like Dubai or Saudi Arabia, mineral water is more expensive than petrol. Mara, would you actually believe in Dubai, mineral water is more expensive? If you were to buy in Asda or Carrefour or one of those international supermarket chains in Dubai, you'd find that water is more expensive per liter than 1 liter of petrol in any fuel pump. So because of which we're wasting so much water that we don't realize how scarce water is and how scarce it's going to be going forward in 10, 15 years down the line. Now, there are particular ETFs that follow the global water index that you can also invest in. So when you're investing in S&P index as well, as which I recommend to my clients, you can also invest in water. Now, the particular ETFs and particular stocks that track the water levels, and companies that are into water production, water development, focusing on water as an asset class, they have on average given returns of in excess of 8 to 9% per year for the last 5 years. Now, Mauro, that is excellent returns when you're considering into account risk-free rate, like government bonds, which you will talk about later, Italian bonds, they don't yield as much. So therefore, you're getting into something which we need. It's an asset class we need. We might say stocks are risky. We spoke about GameStop last week. Okay, that's a risky investment, some might say, because you never know if people need games or not. But we need water. It's something we need. Therefore, I believe there is so much volume for growth. There's so much room for growth in this particular asset class. If you compare this to your industrials, your utilities, your banks, or financials, you can always include water as an asset class. Consider as a utility as well in a way, because we need water, and access to fresh, clean water is limited. Now, I'm not going to particularly mention the particular ETFs or the stocks that are part of this play. If you want to get to know more about this, then feel free to contact me, and I'll be more than happy to assist you over consultation. But I would just like to say that it is something that we need. Water is something we need. We may not need gold. We may not need silver. We may not need palladium. We may not need oil, for example. We're drifting and shifting towards electrical vehicles going forward. Certain European countries and India as well have implemented a particular legislation where they're saying that by 2040 they're going to ban new sales of diesel and petrol cars. That's, I would say, it's an EU directive, more. So we have these countries that are banning normal fossil fuel cars, shifting towards electric. So there's an alternative. But I have yet to come across someone who's able to recommend me something that's the alternative for water. It may not give you returns in your thousands of percents or whatever, like GameStop does or something like that. But at the end of the day, it's something stable. It can be included in your portfolio, and definitely go ahead and, start investing into water. I have done myself, and I know that. And you can do it yourself as well. And as I say, world's population is growing. We have a lot of people in the world that will need access to clean, fresh water. And roughly 65% of the world doesn't have access to fresh, clean water to this day in 2021. That includes most of Africa, most of Southeast Asia. It's sad, but that's the truth. And most of the world's population lives in these two continents, Africa and Asia. Thank you so much. Mauro, do you have any questions? Do you have any inputs on this?
Yeah, it's for sure like one of the sectors, to look into, as you're saying, the world population is growing, and for sure we will go towards more and more shortages. In this case, also you mentioned in your article today, very very interesting, that in these sectors, because of the regulation and the natural monopoly that water is, in the management to building the faucets and so on. How do you check the performances in this? Because you don't really have competition in this case.
So first of all, thank you, Mauro, for bringing up this point. And I'm sorry to my viewers, I totally forgot. I wrote about this in my article today, but I totally forgot to mention in this. So yes, water as an asset class, it's regulated by the government. But the benefit advantage here is, Mauro, that the government can also be your competitor, but also your customer. So if you're into a company that is building water infrastructure, for example, laying out the pipes, or cleaning the water from the normal process of how we gather water and clean the water, the whole filtration process. If you're one of those companies, government will also become your client, your customer, because government, for example, they run schools, they run hospitals, they run public utilities. They need water for that. And then government will also be a competitor as well, because government might then come up with their own projects, which you can also benefit from if they give out the tender to you. Now, to the average consumer, to the average investor, Mauro, I wouldn't necessarily say like, okay, go ahead and invest billions of dollars and create your own water company. But I would say invest in companies that are already in this business. So in terms of the regulation, we live in a highly regulated environment after the financial crisis of 2008. So a lot of asset classes are regulated, and this would be one of them as well. But I don't see a major hurdle or a risk involved in water investing because, as I mentioned, it's something that's essential. We need it. So the governments need it. Governments have to run their schools, their hospitals. Like, we need water to build roads, for example, and I don't see any particular government saying, oh, let's not build our infrastructure in the next 5-10 years. So we need water for everything. And this is something like cement manufacturing. We need water. We need water to make the bricks. We need water to, I don't know, whatever we need water for.
To make the food.
To make the food, exactly. So we need, in terms of regulation, the beauty, the advantage and the disadvantage here is that the government is your competitor, but it's also your customer. But let's not go against the grain here. Let's not go against the government. Let's just invest in companies that are already part of the government lobby group. For example, certain companies, like Google and Alphabet and like Microsoft and Amazon, they all lobby the government. We all know that. So there are particular companies in the US that I'm sure lobby the US government. I wouldn't necessarily be able to give the names right now, but then I'm sure there would be. That's the way the corporate world works. So these government has a piggyback with them in the sense that they give them the contracts, but then they also become their clients as well. So it's a win-win situation for both. It's a business that's providing to its client base.
I see.
That's my opinion.
That totally makes sense. And, it's something that we need to face, especially because I saw already some projection that at least before the virus came, then we'll see if this will have an impact in the long term. That in, I think, 10 or 15 years, we will become 10 billions worldwide. And this will put even more pressure on the resources that the world can offer. Then we will see, the Mars explorations and alternatives, to get resources from various areas.
Exactly.
By the way, since you mentioned, since you mentioned the GameStop, as we said yesterday, the other week, now the bonds, like the stocks related to GameStop, fell down vertically. So it was kind of foreseeable in that conversation how things would have played out. So
Indeed.
for sure water is much safer than that.
And now that you mentioned GameStop, I'm sorry I'm cutting you here, but I have to include this. So I was talking to my dad and one of his friends, who happens to be a doctor, and he said that, why didn't you tell me to invest in GameStop? And it's sad, we have highly educated professionals in the world who are following the herd mentality model. Now, we have a doctor who has a little bit of money, who has invested in right sources or resources or right asset classes, right investments all along his life. A 60-year-old man wants to invest into a volatile stock because he's following the shenanigans online. Now, as I mentioned as well, if you have money to spare, money to burn, well and good, go for it. But then I was also watching some memes on Instagram, and a lot of people that have invested their life savings. And Mauro, what's sad is they're actually saying we're sticking up to the hedge funds, the big bad bullies. Now, it's sad. They're losing their life savings, Mauro. They're losing the hundreds and thousands of dollars of their life savings. And they're just saying that we're sticking up to the hedge funds. Now, I'm sorry, guys, to ruin the bubble for you here, but you're ruining the hedge fund's life. Those hedge fund billionaires are still going to be traveling in their supercars, still going to live in their multi-million-dollar mansions, still going to send their kids to private education, while you'll be struggling for food stamps. So I'm sorry, who's losing out here? You're sticking up to who? The big bad boys? It doesn't work like this. This is not the way how the world works. So in terms of, if you want to invest in the right asset classes, even Robert Kiyosaki, it's nice for a change, how people are, average consumer, average investor is changing the market dynamics. I understand that in a way, yes. But then GameStop went up to as high as $483. It's now trading at $92. Like, I'm sorry, do you see the difference all in the space of like a week? That's not the way how markets work. So there's also a meme on Instagram again, Mauro, where it was GameStop and AMC. This is the new Wall Street. So there's like an AMC cinema, and then there's a GameStop right beside each other. And the meme was, this is the new Wall Street. Like, that's how sad it is these days. So it doesn't work like that. Don't do that. And if you want to do something, invest for your future, invest into your education, invest into your books, read more books, invest into your life, get more life lessons rather than starting like following this shenanigans of like, some people have made money. Don't get me wrong. Invest into your future is what I would say.